Professor, thank you for your time. If I can start with the first question, what does the Civil Code do?
The Civil Code in Puerto Rico regulates our private life. So it has over 1,000 norms related to how is human life defined, what is a person, what is a natural person, what is an artificial person, whether an unborn has rights, a fetus has rights or not. And then it goes over once we're born, how do we die in terms of what should be the content of our wills, what kinds of wills are recognized under Puerto Rican law. So it's a huge, important document, as important as the Constitution of any country like ours. It also concerns how do we acquire property, how do we make contracts. It has a lot of norms that regulates our daily personal lives. So it's a very important document.
How
It's
much
not
of the Civil Code has become a subject of contention and controversy?
a small percent. It's the one that relates to family law. It's the one that relates to how is a person and personhood defined. And most of the opposition, most of the public discussion has been around that part of the revision or of the code, which is probably less than 10 or 15%. But of course, it's a fundamental part.
Opposition to it has been very strong, even though it may be a minority. Their voices are very loud. What do these people who oppose it oppose? What are their concerns?
I think the main concern is that the definition, the apparent definition, because we don't have still the final draft. As I speak to you, we are not sure, but we have heard that there is a new draft on how is a person defined or what rights does the unborn has. Okay? What rights the fetus has. It does recognize apparently that the unborn do has rights, which means that he or she can inherit, for instance. But it also implies that it might interfere with a woman's this fundamental right to decide what to do with their body in terms of their reproductive rights. It seems that the amendment that is circulating or that was approved, we are not sure, states that the unborn has rights, but that these rights cannot interfere with the woman's reproductive rights. Now, that seems to accomplish both sides of the discussion, but it is very confusing in terms of what other rights are recognized, and secondly, which I think what really worries and has a deep concern in the women movement and in the population as a whole. I mean, it does imply that if the U.S. Supreme Court ever changes, and we know that something might be in its way, the woman's right, reproductive rights, on issues of how to terminate, okay, uh, and something that she doesn't want to continue living with, the unborn, the fetus. If the Supreme Court decides that leaves that to the states or the territory, that means that then the new article that defines the unborn or the fetus with rights, that right would no longer be interfered if it's prohibited, right to terminate your whatever your fetus, your decision on your body, that would no longer be protected by the U.S. Supreme Court, and that might be in the hands of the legislature of Puerto Rico.
So essentially, it would criminalize abortion. Am I understanding you
It would
correctly?
criminalize. It could criminalize abortion
Okay.
once the Supreme Court of the United States gets out of the way.
What would it do to minority groups like the LGBTQ community?
Well, for all purposes, LGBT community does not exist in the draft that I have knowledge of. There is no particular reference to it, but it does have a section concerning the civil registry and concerning the registry of those persons that are born in Puerto Rico that makes it difficult. It doesn't prohibit, makes it difficult for trans people to have a change officially made in the registry. Okay?
To change their gender, by choice.
Yes, that is going to be difficult, although there is still an outstanding U.S. District Court decision precisely forbidding what the Civil Code's proposal apparently is going to include, which is that it will appear that my gender is crossed. I have then a new gender is added, but whoever reads my register will know what was my previous gender. And the U.S. District Court has decided months ago that that is unconstitutional. But that is the U.S. District Court. It was never appealed to the Court of Appeals. So they are working around that to, in that sense, a victory that was claimed by the trans people with that decision of the U.S. District Court. They're going around that decision.
People have said to me that the civil code would interfere with a same-sex couple's ability to use a surrogate. Is that true? Can you explain?
Yeah, well, we don't have the final version. It does makes it more difficult. And the earlier version, well, we've seen several. One of them prohibited surrogacy, simply prohibited. Then we saw one that allowed it, but it could not be commercialized, which means that you can use surrogacy, but you cannot pay someone for that work. It created obstacles to do that. We don't know what the final version will be, but earlier versions made surrogacy very difficult.
You keep saying that you haven't seen the final version. I don't understand why the people of Puerto Rico would not have seen a final version before it was voted on by their representatives. Help me understand that.
That's my main concern. Because we're in the pandemic, and even if we weren't, there were not public hearings on the amendments, on the issues that concern the governor and many in Puerto Rico after the bill was approved several months ago and it was returned to the legislature. We haven't seen it. The president of the Senate says they've been available in the web. I've been trying to get what is being proposed and being unable to do so. I've been trying, as I talk to you today, at this very moment, trying to find out what exactly was approved last Friday or Saturday, and I have been unable to find out that. Would you know when we will probably know? Once the House of Representatives concurs, which they have anticipated that they will, with the newest version of the Senate. Then we will know exactly what the amendments or the exact content will there. I mean, imagine doing that. Imagine amending a constitution in such darkness. Well, that's exactly what's going on, in my view, with the civil code. And I don't see the reason for it. Because you see, if the legislature feels, and the political party in power feels that they have the votes, that they wish to cultivate certain types of vote, those that support these limitations of the rights, well, they can do it. At the end, they do have the votes. So what is the issue of doing everything in such darkness? It's something incomprehensible because the answer that we get sometimes from the Senate president is, we've been discussing this for 10, 15, 20 years. The amendments were discussed after the governor returned it. It's been on the web. What is the need for further public needs? Well, of course, there is a need for public further needs to find out if there is a deal that both that are against or in favor of it could somehow agree to a language. But that's just been impossible.
It's unbelievable to me, especially as you said, if they have the votes and it's a given that they're going to get what
That's
they want.
right.
Anyway, why would you then almost give people the middle finger and deprive them of the right to be heard on the issues? Wow. Okay. As you said, the majority party is the governor's party, right? The governor's party controls the Senate and the House of Representatives. It's a full sweep. The people who support the amendment or the civil code, why are they so passionate, and what do they say in voicing their support?
Those that are in favor of the amendments, most of them, at least those that we have heard most of, are groups and individuals with deep and sincere religious views, particularly Christians' views. And they understand that the civil code must reflect this, if you may call it, Christian reality. When those life begins, and that the rights of the unborn should be protected, that abortion is immoral and sooner or later should be illegal again, because that's what Christianity or some religions, particularly Protestants in Puerto Rico and Catholics, religion demands for, and they are very active, very well organized. They have made themselves clear that they're going to move their votes against every senator, representative, or governor that goes against their wishes. And they're cultivating those votes besides expressing, and they have the right to do so, their views on this issue. Now, although Christians, evangelicals, and Catholics do have the right to express those views in whatever means they have available legal, what I think is completely, what I think we should be in disagreement with is that the legislature or the governor will lean their ear mainly to those voices and not to the voices both in the feminist movements, in the LGBT movement, in some sector of the academia that are expressing an opposition, a deep opposition, a strong opposition to what is going on here. Especially because it continues to be debated in the darkness.
Isn't this as I listen to you talk about that, I keep thinking about the separation of church and state. I mean, it's very simple.
Yes, I think there is an issue with that, but let me be clear with this. They have a right to express their views.
Of course.
They have a right to take the streets. They have a right to openly threaten those who vote for it. What I'm talking to you, and I think it's what you imply, is that the legislature, although they know where their votes are, at the very least, they should make a reasoned judgment, because they were not elected to represent Christians or Catholics. They represent the people of Puerto Rico. And even if they believe that they have a lot of votes with these groups, at the very least, you should hear fairly, in a transparent way, whether these groups agree with the new amendments And if they don't, why?
What's your belief as to how the governor will handle this? Do you believe she'll sign it?
I think she will sign it. And let me tell you why I am pessimistic. I hope I am wrong.
Is it because she needs those votes in order to be elected?
Unfortunately, that's the reason. I think that, remember, we have in our present governor, although she denies it, there are two governors. The one that assumed the governorship without wanting it, saying that she was not a politician, that she will never seek election. And the governor that months afterwards said that after hearing the voices of the people, she has decided to become a politician and run for re-election. So I hope that at the very least, she gives an opportunity to those groups that oppose these amendments, that she gives them the opportunity that was denied in the legislature, and hear them. Hear them because they have a strong argument. If the amendments are what we believe they are, that their individual fundamental rights are being threatened.
The reality is the current governor of Puerto Rico, who was not elected, who the people arguably inherited, has proven in the past that she can listen to people. Maybe not all people, but she has proven that she can listen to people, and she has changed her mind on issues. In fact, she sent this civil code back to the legislature because she had issues with it initially. Can you explain what those issues she had were?
Yes, she had an issue precisely with the main issue right now, whether the definition and certain sections of the code would in some way interfere with today's recognized women's and LGBT's fundamental rights that are currently recognized. She asked for a new language so that this group will conclude that no longer the language of the code threatened those acquired rights.
So am I understanding you correctly that she was favoring language that would have been pro-choice?
She never used the phrase pro-choice. She was very careful. The phrase that she had used and continues to use is the following: that it will not interfere with the current rights of the woman and my other sexual minorities, current rights as they are currently recognized by the U.S. Supreme Court. That's her language.
And tell me if I'm understanding you correctly. She gets this because she's an attorney, so she knows the semantic game and the wording game. So am I understanding you correctly to say that she wants it to be such that the language of the code is consistent with the language of federal law?
That is correct.
Okay, but federal law right now provides for a woman's right to choose. Mm-hmm. So does she want the civil code to state that a woman has the right to choose?
The civil code does not have, neither today's version or future version, any article that pertains directly to the issue of a woman's right to choose. But the woman's right to choose is directly implied in the definition of the rights of the unborn or the fetus, on the rights of that feature, call it as you wish. The way that is defined, okay, if it recognizes rights to the unborn, then a woman would likely have difficulties in making a decision under state law and its implication on the federal rights. Whether that definition, for instance, constitutes an undue burden. I don't know. We know the ways the Supreme Court is currently handling this issue. So when she says, and those in favor of it, though there are many who say, in fact, one senator introduced an amendment. We believe that it states, as I told you, the unborn has rights, but these rights cannot be exercised if they go against a woman's reproductive rights. Now you may say, well, that takes care of the governor's concern. We are not sure. We are not sure. For instance, we would like to know if the tracking of an amendment like that, if the legislative history of that amendment, which we don't know, it has not been published, we don't know even if there is, clearly states that this amendment should never be interpreted to annul, to nullify, to impede a woman's right to choice. Just to give you a right answer.
Does she want the language, Professor, that essentially says in the Puerto Rico Civil Code that we are always consistent with the federal courts? And if the U.S. Supreme Court says that a woman no longer has the right to choose, then that's what the Civil Code should be consistent with. Am I understanding you correctly?
That's, I think, what is in her mind.
Okay. What is the likelihood that this Civil Code is challenged in federal court? What is it? Is it constitutional as you believe it is being passed now?
I wish I could give you a complete answer, but remember, I don't know the latest version.
Based on what you know, what you've heard.
What I have heard, I think is confusing, and I think it does not validate a woman's right to choose as it is currently recognized by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Listen, you have been fair, I believe, in presenting all sides to help us understand this from an academic perspective, but I'm not going to leave here without asking you your opinion. So what is your opinion on this issue?
I believe that in terms of a woman's right to choose, I think that's a decision of the woman to take and not the state, not the government. So in that sense, I believe that that is a right. It belongs to the group of rights of privacy of a woman to decide whether she will be having that creature or fetus born or whatever. I think that's a personal decision. Second, I believe the human sexuality is diverse and that the civil code should recognize the diversity that there is in human sexuality. And if there is any article that leans toward inequality in terms of human sexuality, under no circumstances that civil code should be approved.